The first time they said it, Mara pretended not to hear. Just a girl floated up from the back of the concrete firing line, wrapped in a sneer and cheap laughter, half drowned by the crack of rifles. She kept her cheek welded to the stock, eye to the scope, finger resting still and disciplined along the trigger guard. The target, a ghostly silhouette at 800 meters, shimmered in the heat. She slowed her breathing, let the noise fall away, and squeezed. The steel plate rang like a bell. Impact, the range officer called. Center mass. 800. A few of the men on either side shifted, their own shots landing wide. Someone muttered something about lucky wind. Someone else coughed a laugh. Mara cleared the rifle, locked the bolt back, and laid it gently on the bench. Only then did she turn. The group of recruits at the back of the line were sharing a grin, the sort of grin that dared you to make it a problem. One of them, a broad-shouldered corporal whose uniform sleeves were rolled too tight over his biceps, looked her up and down. "Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart," he said just loud enough. Ranges and real fights, different planets. Mara smiled, small and controlled. "Good thing I plan on living on both," she replied. The laughter faltered, then rose again, forced this time, brittle around the edges. She didn't bother with more. The targets were being reeled in for the next exercise, and the sun over Camp Nadir was already high and harsh. There would be time later for grins and grudges. For now, there were distances to learn, wind calls to perfect, angles to memorize until they felt like instinct. Because somewhere, someday, the line would be real. And she knew with the quiet certainty of bone and blood that a rifle in her hands would matter more than any of their words. The line turned real faster than anyone expected. 3 months after graduation, after weeks of drills and joint operations and the dizzy feeling of being treated, almost as an equal, Mara found herself wedged behind a shattered stone parapet on the eastern ridge of Hajar Pass, staring down into a valley that was about to become a killing ground. Hajar Pass wasn't much to look at on a map, a narrow corridor of road threading between jagged mountains, some half-paved, some pure carved rock, a single artery connecting 3 scattered villages to the larger city beyond. But when the insurgents rolled out of the northern hills, burning relay towers and cutting fiber, that narrow corridor became the last escape route for thousands of civilians. And right now, those civilians were moving through it in battered trucks and buses and whatever would roll, engines whining with strain as they climbed the switchbacks under gray morning light. Vulture 1, this is Outpost Hajar Actual. The voice crackled in Mara's earpiece. Confirm your position. Mara adjusted the tiny throat mic. Her hands were steady despite the cold. Hajar Actual, this is Vulture 1, she said. Position Juliet 2 on the eastern ridgeline. 1.4 clicks from the pass entrance. Overwatch established. Optics clear. Copy that, Vulture 1. Be advised, hostile recon units reported north-northeast of your position, estimated company strength. Your mission is to slow them, break them, or at least make them think twice about hitting the convoy. Reinforcements are delayed. Hold as long as you can. Out. Reinforcements are delayed. She translated in her head. You're the thin thing between them and everyone below you. Don't break. She shifted, feeling the coarse grit of stone under her knees. Her ghillie cloak merged into the scrub and shale, patches of synthetic grass and dyed burlap blending seamlessly with the broken slope. Her rifle, an old but lovingly maintained bolt-action with a heavy barrel, sat cradled in the notch between 2 boulders, muzzle pointed down at the valley. Winds pushing from left to right, 3 meters per second, came a second voice, calm and measured. Tarek, her spotter, lay prone beside her, binoculars braced on a rock. Temperature, 4 degrees. Visibility, 10 clicks. I've got nothing moving beyond the refugee line yet. Mara exhaled, let her cheeks settle against the rough cheek pad. The scope filled her world with glass and reticles, the convoy below stretching in a slow, rattling line. More than 30 vehicles. Overloaded trucks with children packed in the back like cargo. A bus with no windows and too many faces pressed to the broken frames. A tractor dragging a trailer stacked with mattresses and chairs, and 1 battered piano strapped on top, like a stubborn memory. "Copy," she said softly. "Keep scanning the northern ridges." He didn't answer with words, but she heard the creak of his gear as he shifted, the small sigh as he adjusted focus. They had done this dance enough times in training that speech was almost optional. Almost. The radio hissed again. Mara recognized the clipped tone instantly. Captain Ramon, Outpost Hajar's commander. He had arrived by helicopter 3 nights earlier, with 2 squads of infantry, a mortar team, and a face carved from permanent disapproval. "Vulture 1, his voice snapped. "Status on your firing solution? That column hits us at the pass. We'll barely have enough explosives to slow them down." "Firing lanes are clear," Mara replied. "When they crest that northern ridge, we'll see them. We've got overlapping sectors with the southern team." The southern team was 1 man, parked in a camouflage blind on the opposite mountainside. Wazir, older than most, quiet, his hair gone as steel. He'd nodded to her exactly once when she was introduced, and that was where their relationship began and ended. "You ever been in a real fight?" Ramon had asked her the first night, leaning over the map table in the makeshift command shack. His eyes had skimmed her unit patch, her rifle slung at ready, her calloused hands. "A few," she'd said. "Raids, counter-ambush, 1 close retreat that almost wasn't. Sniping from behind walls and in cities is not the same as holding a mountain," he'd said. "Out here the wind hates you, the rocks want to trip you, and there's nowhere to run. You sure you wouldn't rather be back at base polishing medals?" She'd looked him in the eye. "I didn't come here for medals." He'd given a derisive snort then, the kind that sounded too much like the laughter from Camp Nadir. "We'll see. Don't make me regret putting a rifle in your hands instead of another man." Now his voice snapped through the radio again. "Remember, we need time, not heroics. You don't get points for dying up there." "Understood." She swallowed the impulse to add, "sir." Something about the way he said "we" and you made the word catch hard in her throat. Tarek shifted beside her. "He's worried," he murmured. "He's right," she replied. "We don't get points for dying. We do get a lot of people buried if we fail," Tarek said. Mara nodded once, even though he couldn't see it with her face pressed to the stock. That was the thing no one had explained to her at the academy, or maybe they had and she hadn't believed them. For all the drills and scores and badges, the work boiled down to this stomach-deep knowing that if you didn't do your job, someone else who didn't deserve it would bleed instead. She had grown up feeling that math long before she had names for it. Her father hadn't been a soldier, but the hills around their village made hunters out of everyone who wanted meat in the winter. He had taught her to shoot at 10, out of sheer stubborn practicality. "I only have 1 child," he'd said, setting the rust-spotted rifle in her 2 small hands. "Why would I wait for a son that may never come, when the daughter I have can learn the same?" The neighbors had disapproved in loud whispers. The first time she'd walked through town with a rifle slung twice her height, the butcher's wife had gasped like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing, letting her carry that?" the woman had hissed. "A girl should carry bread, not guns." Her father had just smiled, slow and unhurried. "She can carry both," he'd said. "Better than you think." The first time Mara hit a rabbit at 200 meters, she had felt the recoil sting her shoulder, felt the strange twist in her gut as the small body jerked and fell. Her father had watched her silently as they approached it. When they reached the limp gray bundle, he'd put a hand on her shoulder. "What do you feel?" he'd asked. She had frowned down at the rabbit. "Bad," she'd said honestly, "but not wrong." "Good," he'd said. "If you felt nothing, I'd take the rifle away. If you felt only horror, I would too. You feel both. That means you understand the cost and the need together. Never forget either." She never had. Years later, when recruiters came to the region offering scholarships and steady pay for anyone who passed the tests, she'd signed up before anyone could tell her not to. The entrance exam proctor had raised an eyebrow at her marksmanship scores. "You know, we have other branches," he'd said, tone halfway between amusement and concern. "Communications, medicine, logistics, safer work, more suited." "To what?" she'd asked. His smile had been practiced. "To your background." She'd stare at the neat rows of numbers, that impossible perfect cluster, and thought of winters with full plates instead of hunger, of days when the only thing between her and cold in small-town judgment had been the steadiness of her hands. "I'll take the sniper program, sir," she'd said, "if that's still an option." At Camp Nadir, when the first whispers started, "She's too small, too quiet. She'll break the first time someone shoots back," she remembered the rabbit, her father's hand on her shoulder, and focused on the scope. On the math. On the discipline to be a razor's edge in a world of dull knives. And now here, on Hajar Ridge, the ghosts of ranges and rabbits and distant laughter all narrowed down to thin crosshairs on the last bend of a mountain road. "Contact," Tarek breathed. Mara's pulse stayed, even as she shifted her eye to the upper edge of her vision. "Where?" "North slope, just beyond that broken pine," he said, guiding her gaze with subtle word cues. "See that patch of darker stone, just above it?" She adjusted the scope, tracking. There, a flicker of motion where the slope met the sky, barely more than a shimmer. Then another, lower down, the reflective wink of glass. "Binoculars," she murmured. "Possibly optics." "Range 1,370, Tarek said, scanning with his laser rangefinder. "Wind steady, 3 meters, maybe gusting 4. "Got them," Mara whispered. The world shrank until there was nothing but the small oval of glass and the faint outline of a man's face, partially hidden by a scarf, squinting through binoculars at the convoy below. Beside him, another figure crawled, cradling something long and dark. "Rifle. Forward observer and probable counter-sniper," she said. "Taking the shot." "Send it," Tarek replied. Her breathing slowed. Inhale. Exhale. Pause. The crosshairs settled a fraction above and left of the observer's right eye, compensating for distance, angle, wind. There was no room in that moment for memories or fear or the echo of old sneers. There was only physics and flesh. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, a familiar, almost comforting punch. The crack echoed off the cliffs, a sharp report that chased itself down into the valley. Through the scope, she saw the observer jerk backward and vanish, the binoculars tumbling out of frame. The second figure flinched, scrambling sideways in a useless attempt to outrun a bullet that had already passed. "Impact," Tarek said. "One confirmed, second moving. He's crawling behind cover. Looks shaken. No immediate return fire." The radio burst to life. "Vulture 1, we heard that," Captain Ramon said. "What did you hit?" "Hostile recon element on the northern slope," Mara replied. "Forward observer down. Suspected sniper displaced, but alive. They know we're watching them now." "Good. Keep them nervous." The captain's tone was slightly different. Less like a knife, more like a blunt tool. "Civilian column is at 60% through the pass. Just need you to hold a little longer." Mara glanced down. The convoy crawled along, the first vehicles already disappearing around the bend near the outpost, where mines and barricades and nervous infantry waited. Farther back at the valley mouth, she could see dust, more vehicles pushing, crowding. "They'll try to hit the middle," she said. "Cut the column, trap the rear. Your job is to make that as expensive as possible," Ramon said dryly. "Out." She shifted back to her scope, scanning along the ridge. The surviving enemy sniper would be repositioning now, using terrain and time. She would have been doing the same in his place. A quiet thrill of professional challenge stirred under her ribs. "Think he'll come after us first?" Tarek asked. "Yes," Mara said. "You sound very sure. If someone started punching holes in my plans, I want them gone before I did anything else. Then we should make ourselves hard to find." "We are hard to find," she said automatically, but she shook herself and pulled back from the scope. He was right. They had been on this perch for hours. Even with careful movement discipline, a patient I might notice the slight distortion, the unnatural lines. "Shift 10 meters uphill," she decided. "Use those twin boulders. Leave a decoy here." Tarek nodded, already moving. He pulled a folded thermal blanket from his pack and arranged it roughly where her body had been, tucking the ghillie cloak around it. From a distance, and especially through a scope, it would look like a sniper still in position, a comforting false landmark. The belly crawled up the slope, carefully keeping their profiles low. The rocks scraped at Mara's knees and elbows, cold biting through her gloves, but her mind was already mapping angles, calculating fields of fire. At the new position, the valley looked slightly different, an alternate world shifted by a few degrees. The convoy's midsection was clearer here, the road's subtle rise more pronounced. She settled in, Tarek at her side, and resumed the vigil. Minutes stretched. The wind hissed through sparse grass, carrying faint echoes of engines and sporadic distant shouts from the outpost below. Mara's eyes burned from the cold and the constant focus, but she didn't blink more than she had to. Then, finally, motion again. Got them, Tarek murmured, voice tightening. North slope, 300 meters east of original position. They're spread wider now. See that cluster of rocks shaped like a crooked finger? One just behind it, one lower, one farther down near that scrub patch. Rocket team, maybe. Mara tracked each description. Hostile riflemen tucked against rock, scanning through optics, methodically sweeping. Lower down, 3 figures huddled around a tube-like device. Yes, rockets. Below them, at the scrub, the glint of a mounted machine gun. She ran the math automatically. Priority, counter-sniper, then the rocket team, then the gun. Every second she left one alive increased the chance of them hitting the convoy, those fragile lines of steel and human lives inching along the road. Range, she asked. 1,420 for the rifleman, Tarek said. Wind 5 meters per second now, still left to right. Drop is significant at this elevation. Adjust 38 clicks up. She made the adjustment by feel, fingers spinning turrets. Her heart rate had ticked up, but it was a controlled rise, a body readying itself. She welcomed it. Focus sharpened. Rifleman first, she whispered. Send. She watched the man's scope sweep toward the decoy position. His posture changed slightly, a subtle tension in his shoulders. He'd seen something that looked almost right. She squeezed. The shot cracked across the mountain. Through the scope, she saw a small puff of dust burst from the rock inches to his left. He flinched, flung himself sideways, rolling down a few feet before slamming behind a boulder. Miss, low left, Tarek said calmly. I see it. She'd underestimated the gust midway. He spooked now. Rockets are moving, Tarek warned. They saw the muzzle flash. They're readjusting toward the convoy. Take the gun team, Mara said quickly. Suppress them. I'll correct on the sniper. Tarek didn't argue. He slid his own lighter rifle into place, angled more toward the lower slope. His shots wouldn't have the brute reach of hers, but at this range they would hurt. Mara took a slow breath, tracking the patch of rock where the enemy sniper hid. She couldn't see him, but she could guess his options, peek from the right, from the left, or pop up briefly over the top. Each had advantages. Each had a death chance if she guessed correctly. Come on, she murmured under her breath. Show me who you are. Tarek's rifle barked twice, sharp and rapid. Below, one of the rocket team spun and fell. The others dove for cover, dragging the launcher. A dark shape darted from behind the sniper's boulder. Wrong side, faster than she'd predicted. He sprinted downslope, trying to relocate completely. Mara swung the rifle, adjusting instinctively for lead and speed and distance. There was no time for careful math now, only practiced reflex. She fired. The shape crumpled mid-stride, rolling in a limp tumble until it lodged against a stunted tree. Impact, Tarek said. Target down. Rocket team suppressed. They're pinned. Machine guns still active but firing high. They're nervous. The radio exploded with overlapping voices. Enemy contact confirmed on the north slope. Convoy rear taking sporadic fire. Mortar team, adjust your drop. You're hitting too far west. Vulture 1 status? Ramon snapped. Counter-sniper neutralized, Mara said. Rocket team pinned. Machine gun harassing the rear, but not accurate yet. Good work. Keep them occupied. We just need another 20 minutes. Maybe 15 if the drivers stop stopping to argue about who goes first. Mara risked a glance down. He was exaggerating, but not by much. She could see at least 2 instances of trucks stalled side by side, drivers leaning out and waving their arms in heated debate, only to be shoved back by soldiers gesturing emphatically toward the north slope. People had a remarkable capacity to argue in the face of doom, she thought. Maybe it was a survival mechanism. She turned back to the scope. Even with the sniper down, the enemy teams fanned out with new determination. More figures appeared on the ridge, some hauling ammunition, others setting up what looked ominously like a mortar baseplate. "They're not just harassing," she said quietly. "They're setting up to pound the road." "I see it," Tarek replied. "Range on that mortar? Too far for us to do with certainty on the first shot," she said. "But we don't have the luxury of certainty." She dialed adjustments, aimed for the man aligning the tube. Her finger tightened, released. The shot landed close, but not perfect. A spray of dirt and stone, a stumbled movement. The man staggered, clutching his shoulder, and another ran to help. The mortar toppled sideways. "That'll slow them," Tarek said. "Not enough," Mara answered. He didn't disagree. The fight stretched, a tug-of-war measured in meters and seconds. Mara and Tarek worked like a single organism, spotting, firing, adjusting. She prioritized leaders, gunners, anyone who moved with too much confidence. She took shots that weren't guaranteed because she had to, because every enemy who flinched or ducked was a fraction of a second longer than a child in a pickup truck remained untouched. Return fire increased. At first it was wild, bullets kicking up dirt a dozen meters wide of their position. But as more enemy eyes and optics searched the slopes, the rounds began to pucker stone closer and closer. "Time to move again," Tarek said after one particularly near impact shattered the rock just below Mara's barrel. "Agreed." She slid backward, keeping low. They left another decoy. This one simpler, just a helmet on a rock beside a rolled blanket. It didn't need to fool them long, just enough to draw sight lines. They crawled laterally this time, following a narrow ledge toward a natural outcrop that offered better cover but more limited view. Trade-offs. War was nothing if not trade-offs. By the time they settled, the convoy had nearly cleared the central stretch. The lead vehicles were already winding down the far side toward Outpost Hajar's inner perimeter. Engine noise carried differently here, echoing off the cliffs in strange patterns. It made the whole valley feel like a giant drum. "Vulture 1, came Rahman's voice again, tighter now. "Be advised, we're picking up enemy movement in the dry riverbed south of the road. They must have had a path we didn't see. They'll hit the convoy from below if they break through." Mara shifted her scope. The riverbed was a scar winding through the valley, currently nothing but stones and a trickle of water. At first she saw nothing but shadows and rock. Then a helmet. Then two. Then the low, purposeful scuttle of bodies using the riverbed's edges as cover. "I count 15, no, 20 fighters," she said. "Maybe more further back. They're carrying light machine guns, some RPGs, advancing fast. Two spread out for the mortars to hit effectively without risking the convoy," Rahman said. "We're sending a squad from the outpost down to intercept, but they won't reach them in time. We need you to thin them out." Mara frowned. "Our angle from here is bad. We only see parts of the riverbed." "Do what you can," Rahman snapped. "If they get within 300 meters of the convoy, it'll be a slaughter." The radio clicked off. Command decisions made, consequences delegated. Mara studied the terrain quickly. The ridge curved here, creating pockets of shadow and light. If she moved another 50 meters along, she might get a clearer shot, but it would expose them to more than north slope fire. She looked at Tarek. "We have to risk it." He met her gaze steadily. "Lead the way." They moved fast this time, trading stealth for speed. Bullets cracked overhead, but most were still wild. The enemy didn't know the exact new position yet. At the new perch, the world opened up. The riverbed lay spread out below, the fighters within it now clearer, their shapes darting from rock to rock. They were closer to the convoy than she'd hoped, perhaps 600 meters and closing. Mara settled, trusting her body to make the micro-adjustments she didn't have time to think through. "One with the RPG, right side of the bed, crouched behind that white rock," Tarek murmured. "I see him." She took the shot. The fighter collapsed backward, the RPG skittering across the stones. "One down," Tarek said. They noticed. "They're splitting, some trying to flank. Keep calling targets." It became almost mechanical then, the way only deeply trained actions could: call, aim, fire, adjust, repeat. She dropped a machine gunner as he tried to pivot his weapon. She clipped a runner in the leg, sending him sprawling and bottlenecking the fighters behind him. But there were still many, and she was just one line of steel and breath and resolve. Vulture 1. Ramon's voice cut through between shots. We see your work. Squad Beta is moving down from the outpost, but they're taking fire from the North Slope. North Slope's busy with us too, Mara answered between reloads. Her fingers were raw from slamming rounds into magazines. Do you have any air support at all? Drones. Nearest strike drone is an hour out. Nearest manned aircraft is on another operation, Ramon said. We have what we have. Of course they did. A sudden, sharp crack sounded, different from the usual echo, cleaner, faster. A bullet smashed into the rock inches from Mara's face, showering her with dust. Another snapped past Tarek's shoulder, kissing his sleeve. New sniper, Tarek hissed, ducking. Northwest, high angle. That was too precise to be random. Mara's heart jolted. The earlier rifleman hadn't been alone then. She slid sideways instinctively as another round struck where her head had been. He has us bracketed, she said, teeth gritted. He saw the muzzle flash. We can't stay here, Tarek said. If we move, the riverbed team advances unchecked. She glanced down. Already the fighters were pushing harder, emboldened by the pause in her fire. If we don't move, we're dead, Tarek retorted. Then they advance unchecked anyway. He wasn't wrong. The calculus slammed around her skull, ugly and immediate. She thought of the sneers at Camp Nadir, of Ramon's earlier dismissal, of the unspoken expectation that when the world burned, someone else, not the men with the loud opinions, would somehow, miraculously, keep it from spreading. Fear clawed at her ribs, but underneath it was something stronger. A quiet, stubborn core that had seen rabbits and winter and long days of doubt and had refused to let go. I'll draw his fire, she said abruptly. You shift to a backup spot with a narrower angle. Focus on the nearest fighters in the riverbed. If I can keep the sniper's eyes on me, you can still hit them. Tarek stared at her like she'd sprouted horns. That's insane. You'll be silhouetted. Not fully. I'll use that broken lip of rock as partial cover, she said, pointing with her chin. He's good, but he still has to calculate. I just need to be unpredictable enough. And if he's better than you think, then I die doing something useful, she said simply. His jaw clenched. I did not come up this mountain to watch you bleed for someone else's screw-up, Mara. Neither did I, she said softly. We came to keep people alive. This is how we do that now. He was silent for a long second, radio chatter and distant gunfire filling the gap. Fine, he said at last. But if you get yourself killed, I will hunt your ghost and yell at you for eternity. Deal, she said, and flashed him a quick, fierce grin she didn't quite feel. They moved. Tarek slithered down and to the right, toward a narrow cleft that would give him a slice of the riverbed view. Mara stayed higher, edging toward the broken lip of rock she'd indicated, a place where the slope dropped off sharply, leaving only a jagged outcropping for cover. Her instinct screamed at her that she was too exposed. She ignored them and settled in, aligning her rifle toward where she knew the sniper must be. She didn't need to see him clearly yet. She needed to make him see her. She fired 3 quick shots in succession, not at visible targets, but at likely vantage points along the northwestern ridge. Each muzzle flash was a flare in the sniper's world, a beacon saying I'm here. The response was immediate. A shot cracked and tore a groove from the stone by her elbow. Another punched into the rock behind her head. She shifted position by a meter, then another meter between shots. Fire move, erratic, unpredictable, never where she'd just been. There was a certain intimacy to dueling another sniper. They were invisible to each other except through glass and guesswork, connected by physics and intent. Somewhere out there, another pair of eyes was narrowed, another brain grinding through wind estimates and angles, trying to thread a bullet through the space between her thoughts. She respected him in a clinical way. She also intended to kill him. Between exchanges, she risked a glance at the riverbed. Tarek had found his angle. His lighter rifle snapped in controlled bursts, dropping the frontmost fighters, forcing the rest back into cover. "Nice work," she muttered under her breath. "Mediocre," came his reply in her earpiece, voice strained. "You're hogging all the fun." Another shot barked from the northwest, closer still. Stone chips stung her cheek. She felt warmth as blood trickle from a shallow cut. She hissed softly, not from pain, but from the knowledge that he was walking his shots in. He had a range now. All he needed was one moment where she moved too predictably, where her timing became a pattern. "Come on," she whispered, scanning the ridge. "Where are you?" She caught it, just a flicker of motion behind a dark boulder, the faint glint of glass as he leaned out to check his work. Her world shrank to that glint. She made a lightning-fast calculation, wind, distance, angle. She didn't bother with turrets. There was no time. She held high and left and trusted the sum of years of practice. She fired. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the glint vanished. A fraction of a second later, something dark tumbled from behind the rock, rolling down the slope in a boneless slide. "Impact," Tara called. "Unconfirmed," she said, heart pounding. "But I don't see him anymore." The wind seemed to shift, carrying the echo of that shot out into the wide valley like a question. Silence from the northwest. No return fire. No more precise, hateful cracks. Only the distant rattle of automatic weapons and the scrape of boots on rock. "I think you got him," Tarek said quietly. "Riverbed team is faltering. They lost their nerve." "Keep hitting them," Mara said. "Make sure they never get it back." She shifted focus, reacquiring the fighters below. It was true. Without the snipers covering fire, they had slowed, bunching against the riverbed's bends and shallows. A few were already pulling back, darting from rock to rock in retreat. She picked off one of the rearmost, not for efficiency, but for message. You don't get to run, either. Minutes later, the first of Squad Beta spilled down the hillside from outpost Hajar, their uniforms dark against the pale rock. They crashed into the remnants of the riverbed force with brutal momentum, muzzle flashes flaring. Mara held her fire, careful not to risk a friendly hit. Instead, she scanned the broader slopes, searching for any new threats. Her muscles trembled now, the delayed reaction of adrenaline starting to ebb. "Vulture 1, Ramon's voice came through, threaded with a tension that was part fear, part exhilaration. "Convoy reports 100% of vehicles now past the choke point. We're closing the outer gate behind them." "You did it." "Not yet," she said automatically. "There are still fighters on the north slope. They can still harass the rear. We're redeploying mortars to handle that," Ramon said. "You've bought us enough time, Mara. More than enough." He used her name. It landed heavier than she expected. "My team will keep overwatch until you order otherwise," she replied. "Your team?" There was a slight huff, somewhere between a laugh and a disbelieving snort. "You mean you and that lunatic spotter?" She almost smiled. "Yes, sir. Well, Vulture 1 team, you just kept a mountain from turning into a graveyard. Hold position while we stabilize down here. Then we'll rotate you out. You've done your share." The radio clicked off, leaving only the wind and the distant shouts of men cleaning up the back edge of a battle. Mara let herself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in what felt like hours. Her shoulder ached fiercely from the repeated recoil. Her cheek was sticky with blood from the cut. Her eyes felt like sandpaper. Beside her, Tara crawled back up to her level, his face pale but grinning. "Well," he said, flopping onto his back for a moment to stare at the sky. "That was not in the brochure." She snorted, the sound half a laugh, half a choke. "You read the brochure? I like to know what adventure I'm signing up for," he said. Then his grin faded slightly as he studied her face. "You're bleeding." "It's shallow," she said, dabbing at the cut with her glove. "He just kissed me with a stone. And here I thought you had higher standards." She rolled her eyes, but the banter helped. It anchored her, kept her from floating away on the adrenaline come-down. Silence settled between them for a while, not uncomfortable. Below, the battle noise dwindled to isolated pops of gunfire and the murmur of shouted orders. The convoy had stopped at the far side of the pass, some vehicles forming a loose defensive circle while medics moved through the lines. "Did you hear them?" Tarek asked suddenly. "Hear who?" "On the radio, a lot of chatter from the drivers. When you took out that second rocket team, they started calling you Guardian of Hajar, like you were some ancient mountain spirit with a gun." She flushed, glad her face was mostly hidden by gear. "That's ridiculous." "Sure," he said, "but it's better than what they used to call you at Nadir, yes?" He said it lightly, but the weight was there, just a girl. "You heard that?" she asked quietly. "I have ears," he said, "and I know jealousy when I hear it." "It wasn't all jealousy," she said. "Some of it was just habit. The world teaches people strange equations. Girl equals weak. Soft. Not for this." "And yet," he said, gesturing vaguely at the valley below, where smoke curled from scattered impact craters and the convoy remained intact. "Here we are." "Here we are," she echoed. She remembered the faces on the monitors back at base, the news feeds that would eventually show footage of the convoy rolling through, children waving from truck beds, the pass behind them still standing. Most people would never know that there had been a rifle on a ridge, a heart beating steady behind a scope, a hand refusing to tremble. And that was fine. She hadn't done this for headlines. She had done it for the butcher's wife back in her village, who would someday hear that the mountain had held and never know which girl's hands had helped hold it. She had done it for every recruit who would follow her into the sniper program, some of them girls who'd never held a rifle before, others who had learned on old rusted guns in their father's fields, all of them walking into a room where someone would inevitably arch an eyebrow and say, "Really?" Maybe now, somewhere, one of those eyebrows would hesitate before rising. An hour later, after the lines had stabilized and outpost Hajar's walls were secure, a truck rumbled up the narrow track to retrieve them. Mara and Tarek slid into the back, gear piled at their feet. The truck's bed smelled of oil and dust and faintly of onions from some earlier supply run. As they bounced down the trail, the pass opened in front of them, revealing the full scope of what they just played a part in. Vehicles jammed every available space near the outpost, families huddled together, soldiers moving through the crowd with water and rough reassurance. The air was thick with noise, crying children, low murmurs, occasional laughter that sounded almost hysterical with relief. The truck pulled up near the temporary command post, a cluster of sandbags and a prefabricated shelter. Captain Rahman waited there with a tablet in hand, his jaw set in its usual hard line. Mara hopped down first, followed by Tarek. She straightened, feeling every ache flare at once. Rahman's gaze swept over her, taking in the grime, the blood on her cheek, the rifle slung over her shoulder. "You took your time coming down," he said. "We were making sure they weren't coming back," she replied. "They won't. Not today." He grunted. "Intelligence confirms heavy casualties on their side. They'll think twice before trying this route again." He tapped his tablet. "Our initial estimate said we might lose a third of the convoy if they hit the pass hard. We lost 4 vehicles. Some wounded. Few fatalities, mostly from the first surprise volleys." His eyes lifted to hers. For the first time, there was no visible disdain there. Only tiredness and something like reluctant respect. "I have after-action reports from half a dozen officers and drivers, all mentioning a ghost on the ridge picking off anyone who stuck their head up," he said. "I also have surveillance footage from one of the drones that finally got here, showing your position and the angles you were hitting from." He flipped the tablet around briefly. She saw a grainy aerial shot of the mountainside, a small prone figure moving with insect-like precision between rocks, muzzle flashes like fireflies. "For what it's worth," Rahman said, "I was wrong." She blinked. "Sir, when you arrived, I filed a note with command recommending they assign you to a less direct role," he said. "Something where your talents could be used without unnecessarily endangering you. I used a phrase better suited at least twice." Tara coughed into his fist, badly covering a scoff. Rahman went on, as if he hadn't heard. "I thought I'd be spending this day explaining to your family why their daughter died on a mountain instead of at a safe desk. Instead, I find myself explaining to my superiors how one sniper team held an entire ridge long enough for us to save thousands." His mouth twisted slightly like the words tasted odd. "So, I was wrong." Mara didn't know what to say to that. Apologies from men like Ramon were rarer than ammunition in a siege. You weren't entirely wrong, she said finally. It is dangerous up there, but you were wrong about who could handle it. He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. I suppose I was. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so they weren't overheard by the milling soldiers nearby. Some of those idiots back at Nadir who like to talk too much, he said. They're going to hear about this. They're going to see your name on citations and think it's a fluke. Luck. They'll say the wind fought on your side or the enemy was clumsy. He tilted his head, regarding her intently. Let them, Mara said quietly. Wind changes. Enemies learn. Mountains erode. The only thing I can control is whether I'm ready next time. Ramon studied her for another heartbeat. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Debrief in 30, he said, reverting to clipped command tone. Medical check first. You're no good to me if you fall over. Yes, sir, she replied. As he turned away, he paused and glanced back over his shoulder. And Mara, he said, yes. Next time someone says you're just a girl, his mouth quirked faintly. Remind them what just a girl did here today. He walked off before she could answer, barking orders at a passing lieutenant. Tarek let out a low whistle. Hear that? I think he almost paid you a compliment. Careful, she said. If he hears you say that, he'll deny everything. They made their way toward the makeshift medical tent. As they walked, people stared. Some nodded, some smiled tentatively. A child stood in their path for a moment, no older than 8, her hair tangled, cheeks streaked with dried tears. Did you shoot the bad men? The girl asked, eyes wide. Mara stopped. She knelt slowly, so she was at eye level. Her knees protested. I stopped some of them, she said. A lot of people helped today. The soldiers at the outpost, the drivers, the medics. We all did our part. The girl considered this, then nodded solemnly. My mother says you're an angel, she said. But angels don't use guns. Your mother is very kind, Mara said. But I'm not an angel. I'm just someone who had a job to do. The girl frowned, not satisfied. But you're a girl. Mara smiled, small and tired but genuine. Yes, she said. I am. Can girls really shoot like you? The girl asked, skepticism warring with hope in her voice. Girls can do a lot of things, Mara said. Maybe one day you'll do something even braver than this. Maybe you'll be the one who talks people out of fighting so no one needs rifles at all. The girl wrinkled her nose. Talking sounds boring. Sometimes, Mara agreed. Sometimes it's the hardest thing of all. The girl glanced down at Mara's rifle, at the scuffed stock and the matte barrel. Is it heavy? Sometimes, Mara said again. But I trained for it. The girl reached out impulsively and touched the sling, fingers brushing the worn fabric. Thank you, she said suddenly, and then she darted away, vanishing into the crowd. Mara straightened slowly. Her back twinged. Feels different, doesn't it? Tarek said quietly. Being seen. I'm not sure I like it, she admitted. Better when no one knows your name. Let's wait. He studied her for a moment. You carried an entire flank of a battle on your shoulders today. I think you'll manage a few names. She didn't answer. She just looked back up at the ridge, the place where she'd lain for hours, invisible and vital. Her world narrowed to reticles and breaths. From down here it looked small, ordinary, just another piece of rock in a range of many. But she knew what it had been. The line, the edge the world balanced on, while people who had never met her trusted that whoever was up there would not break. Night came late to Hajar Pass that day. By the time the last of the convoy rolled out towards safer roads, the sky had gone from steel gray to a bruised purple, stars beginning to prick through the haze. Floodlights lit the outpost in stark, artificial daylight. Beyond that circle, the mountains sank into shadow. Mara sat on an ammo crate near the edge of the light's reach, cleaning her rifle. The ritual calmed her. The careful disassembly, the methodical swabbing of the barrel, the inspection of each moving piece. The rifle had served her well. It deserved care in return. She ran a cloth along the bolt, wiping away a faint smear of carbon. Her hand shook once, then steadied. Her body was finally catching up to the fact that it had been running on borrowed energy all day. Thought I'd find you hiding out here. She glanced up. Wazir, the older sniper from the southern team, stood a few meters away, hands tucked into his jacket pockets against the chill. Not hiding, she said. Just finishing the day. He ambled closer, his own rifle slung casually across his back. I watch you work from my side, he said, through my scope, when I wasn't busy trying not to get shot anyway. I watch your side sometimes too, she said. You took out that truck near the ridge before it could flank the rear vehicles. He shrugged modestly. You took out half their leadership before they even knew we were there. I just cleaned up mistakes. He nodded at her rifle. How many? She considered. I don't know. His eyebrows rose. You're not keeping count? I stopped keeping count after my first real operation, she said. It didn't feel useful. What do you keep then, he asked. She thought of the rabbit again, of the way her father had asked her how she felt. I keep balance, she said slowly. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't fired. I think about the kids in those trucks, the families in that pass. I measure the weight that way. He regarded her for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Good answer. Is there a right one? She asked. For me, there is, he said. For you, there will be. Might be the same, might not. But if you're asking the question at all, you're already ahead of most. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth patch. It was faded and frayed, the stitching loose in places, a simple emblem of a hawk in flight, its wings spread wide. This was given to me when I finished my first tour, he said, by a man who'd been shooting longer than I'd been alive. He told me, you carry this until you find someone more stubborn than you are. Someone who'll hold the line, even when everyone else says they shouldn't be the one holding it. He held out to her. Mara stared at it, throat tight. I can't take that, she said. You've earned it. I've earned the right to pass it on, he said. And I've been looking for the right idiot for years. But he stepped closer, pressing the patch into her hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. I heard what they called you back in a deer, he said quietly. Just a girl. Like that was an insult. Today, when the world tried to collapse, just a girl kept it standing. That seems like the kind of stubborn my old mentor would appreciate. His voice had no mockery in it, only a simple statement of fact. Mara swallowed hard. The patch felt heavier than its size warranted. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me, he said. Just keep earning it. Because there will be more days like this. More passes, more roads, more lines that need holding. And there will always be someone ready to say, you can't be the one to do it. He stepped back, shadow swallowing him gradually as he moved away from the floodlights. And every time, he added, voice drifting back, you'll pick up that rifle anyway. Just a girl, holding the line. She watched him go until the darkness took him completely. Then she looked down at the patch again. The hawk's wings were frayed, but still spread wide, still reaching. She found a threadbare spot on her own uniform sleeve and began carefully stitching it on with a needle from her kit. Her fingers were clumsy with exhaustion, but she persisted until the hawk sat secure over her heart. Only then did she finish reassembling her rifle, the pieces clicking into place with familiar precision. When she was done, she slung it over her shoulder and stood, looking out at the barely visible silhouette of the ridge. Tomorrow, or next week, or next month, there would be another call, another pass, another convoy, another nameless group of people who needed someone up high with iron in their hands and steadiness in their bones. Someone, somewhere, would repeat the old line with a derisive snort. Just a girl. She would remember the weight of the patch, the feel of the trigger, the sound of steel targets ringing at 800 meters and of real bullets saving real lives at 1,400. She would remember the way a single rifle could hold back an avalanche of chaos if the person behind it refused to yield. And she'd smile that same small, controlled smile she'd worn on the firing line at Camp Nadir. Just watch, she'd say, mostly to herself. Then her sniper rifle would sing again, and the line would hold.